Okay, I'm going to now turn to Justin. Take it forward.
Yes. So what I'm planning to say is, I suppose, one of many possible stories that it would be possible to tell about what seems to be happening in the world and what seems to be happening in our communities. And I'm telling it from a very personal viewpoint. So I'm not a researcher or a demographer. The things that Michael said about me, as well as a Jewish educator as well. And so have come to the conclusions or the questions that I'm going to raise from speaking to many people both within and without the Jewish community, from the work that I do that takes me into contact inside and outside of the Jewish community with many different kinds of organisations and people, from reading, from using the kind of technologies that are just beginning to become available. So it's one story out of many, but it seems true to me, or it seems like it has enough truth that it might be worth saying anyway. Part of the take that I have is, yes, I think that we are on the edge of something. I think this idea that it's very difficult to know what you're in the middle of when you're in the middle of it, but it's possible to see afterwards, is really important to hold on to. My sense is there are a number of things happening simultaneously which are already proving hugely influential on what it's like to, say, live in this country, and also what it's like to live as a Jew in this country. And of the many possible themes, I've picked two which seemed to complement each other and also be very important. The names that I have for them are, so one I've called the dissolving of roles. And what I mean by this, I'll say more about this. A trend that has probably been going on for a very long time, certainly way back into the last century, which is the dissolving of all the kinds of authority that we relied on, came to know ourselves through, that provided answers for us. So it's kind of like a move from, in society, from being able to turn to people like rabbis and elders and positions of authority in society to understand where we stood, and that dissolving or going away and leaving us much more on our own than we were before. So that will be one theme. And the second theme is kind of like a parallel theme, which I see, which is hard to find a name for, which I've thought of as both as increasing individualism, but also another way of talking about it I came across the other day is the increasing corporatization of our lives. So what I mean by that is, a tiny example is, I don't have it out on the table. I'm the owner of an iPhone, like many people are, but there could be any other. And I pick it up and I look at it every day, and I'm instantly connected through this piece of technology to a bunch of corporations that are in my life all the time. Apple and Google and Facebook and all of these kind of things show up in my life consistently. So these are the two themes. So here's my way of thinking about what I mean by the dissolving of roles. So I'm not sure I've ever really experienced this. I'm a couple of years older than Keith, just turned 40. And it's hard to tell whether the world was like this when I was a child, but it doesn't seem like this anymore. It seems to me that not so long ago, if we wanted to find out where we stood in the world, or we wanted to find out the answers to big and difficult questions, there would be obvious places to turn. So our society was set up around there being people who would hold responsibility for difficult questions. If you want to know what to do in this or that situation, you could go and ask a rabbi, or you could ask an old person in your community. You could ask all kinds of people who would orient us in life, who would shield us from complexity, who would deal with a lot of the ambiguity that we otherwise would have to face. And that over the last, I don't know how long, through not being a demographer or a sociologist or these things, but over recent periods of time, it seems to me that our reliance on, or our ability to turn to people who are in authority to find answers, has progressively been eroded and dissolved. We don't have people to turn to anymore who will tell us where we stand, who will tell us who we are, who will answer big and difficult questions on our behalf. So this, of course, is a wonderful thing and a terrifying thing all at the same time. The wonderful part of it is that we have a much greater possibility to find out for ourselves. Each of us in life has a much wider range of choices available to us, and also a much bigger responsibility to find out for ourselves. But there's a flip side to it as well, which is that we have to face much more anxiety. And you can see this showing up in all kinds of very simple ways. I mean, the simplistic way I have of talking about this, I suppose, is to think about the career choices that people have. Here I am, for example, pursuing a career as a, I don't know, what did we say about me? A consultant, facilitator and coach. Who knows what that is? This isn't a recognised profession with a long history. This isn't, it's even hard to describe to people what it is. And these kind of professions or careers or opportunities have flourished because a lot of the rigid, easy to understand ways that we had of defining ourselves have disappeared. So from my own personal experience, it's both this combination of incredibly exciting and incredibly terrifying to be forging a path as an adult in the society that we live in today, not knowing what I ought to do, not knowing what it means, not having anybody to turn to who will say, do this or that and it will work out this way. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. And I think that it affects every part of our society. It affects the career choices people make. It affects what happens in our communities. It affects our sense of, one of the things that we've been planning this event talking about, it affects our sense of entitlement. So what I mean by that is, if all the old structures have gone away and I'm an individual and I can choose whatever I like, well, then I'm really entitled to do whatever I like. It's my right, my entitlement to self-expression all the time and to choice. So this is one of the things that's going on. So there's enormous opportunity and enormous anxiety, because the truth is none of us really know what it is that we're meant to do or what the answers are. So that's one theme that I see going on, which I think is a big unfolding in society that is changing the way our communities are. The second thing that I said I would bring up is I called individualism and the corporatization of everyday life. So what I think is happening, I think this is a parallel move that's happening in our society. What I think is happening is that into that space in which we can each take way more responsibility for ourselves and feel way more anxious about not knowing what we're meant to do or what we stand for, have come a couple of extraordinary things. One is the rise of big global brands and corporations by which we orient ourselves and identify ourselves. And the other has come this extraordinary technology that's exploded. I am constantly amazed that I can carry this phone around, and I make a big deal of mobile phones because I think they're probably way bigger influence on what's happening in society than sometimes we recognise. The phone looks like, and the internet as well is another great example, it looks superficially like it's a reflection of my individual freedom. So I can choose who I connect with on Facebook. I have a little constellation of friends that I'm connected with on Facebook, and I can choose what website I go and look at, and all of those kind of things. So it looks like it's an expression of my freedom, but also what's going on at the same time is I'm constantly being bombarded by messages from different organisations and different brands about who I ought to be. So although it looks like I have enormous choice, my Facebook account broadly connects me with people who already think like I do, who I already like, and it just reinforces who I am already. So that's one of the things that's going on. But it goes much further than that, because I don't know how many of you have ever done something like shopping on Amazon, for example. So when I go and log into Amazon, which is primarily the way I buy books these days, it tells me what kind of books I might like based upon the kind of books I already have bought. So Amazon does this extraordinary thing where every time I log on, it tells me what people who are already like me already buy, so that I can buy more of the things that make me like the kind of person I already am. It never introduces me to something that might be uncomfortable, stretching, different, shocking, have an alternative point of view. It just kind of gives me more of who I already am. And one of the things that's really lovely about this, and also, actually that's really the wrong thing to say, one of the things that I think that this does is it numbs us to the anxiety that we feel that I was bringing up before about not knowing what I should do or who I am. And it's really extraordinary. Whenever I feel anxious, I can pull out my phone or get on the web, and I've got lots of people who will tell me that I'm okay and will give me books to read, and I'll feel great because... But somehow, what's happening, it seems to me, is it takes away... probably the best way of saying it is it numbs my anxiety, it makes me feel superficially connected to other people, but not really very deeply connected at all. So I can walk around with this kind of technology feeling like I'm connected to the world, but actually I'm quite distantly connected to the world, and I never really have to meet anybody who has a different point of view from me. So I think this is really interesting. On the one hand, this kind of technology is an incredibly powerful way of being created and of having new things happen. I think Keith's example of the project that he's involved in, the New Jewish Thought, is a great example of that. But for many of us, what's happening is that we find that all of this technology is a way of feeling superficially connected, but actually being distant from other people. So the way I had of saying this was, and I think this is true for many of the people I meet through my work, is in the midst of all this connection, we feel quite alone. We feel quite quickly unseen for who we really are. And we pretty quickly lose sight of any deep, meaningful or vibrant engagement with life. So this is when I said that this would be a personal account. This is one of the things I really notice about myself, and I consider myself to be somebody who thinks a lot about being vibrantly engaged in life. That the impact of these kind of technologies is that I feel distant, numbed to myself, not connected to other people, and it's all pervasive in our society. And the other thing that I think that it often breeds is a kind of a feeling of resentment, actually, is here I am finding myself by engaging in all of this wonderful technology, but because it no longer feels vibrant or engaging, I feel kind of resentful that there's no one there to see me, to really appreciate me for who I am, and there's no way of bringing myself fully to the situations that I'm in. So I think that this is the background into which our communities have a really interesting question to face. So my question is, are we going to amplify this feeling of being numb, of being comfortable, of being served? Is the purpose of our communities to serve people in the same way that we've come to expect to be served by Amazon that tells me what I want to buy, and Facebook that connects me with my friends, and all of those kind of things? Are we going to help people to have a kind of distant form of engagement, not passionate, not vibrant? Are we going to help people to stay the same? Or are we going to be the kind of communities that really help people to find really deep, passionate engagement with themselves and with each other, and to really allow people to be seen and appreciated for who they are? And to pick up on a theme that Keith raised, are we willing for our communities to be places where people can encounter what's both really meaningful and really uncomfortable all at the same time? The really big questions that aren't the numb ones about which books should I buy and who am I connected to on Facebook, but who am I, what do I stand for, what do I care about, how do I deal with the huge uncertainty and the huge opportunity of life? I think that energy that's around engaging meaningfully with things that are uncomfortable is where the great energy that has produced things like Limud, for example, comes from. I think this kind of passionate engagement with things that we don't yet know is what has flowered all of these kind of things. And this is the energy that will continue to seed many, many different forms of community and possibility. And the one which is just about serving people is the one which has us stay the same. And this is, so I don't have an answer to this. I've wanted to raise some themes. We'll find out whether they've made sense or not. I think this is one of the great dilemmas, one of the great things for us to observe in our communities is which ones of these are we paying attention to? I don't have any answers, I just have lots of questions. And I think that's where I'll leave it for the moment with that question in mind.
Great. Thank you very much, Justin.